Elena Martinez pressed her hand against the kitchen counter, steadying herself as another wave of dizziness washed over her. The morning sun streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of their Chicago penthouse felt too bright, too cheerful for how wrong everything felt in her body. She'd been trying to reach Marco for the past hour. 5 calls, all sent to voicemail. She stared at her phone, watching his contact photo smile back at her, a picture from their honeymoon in Santorini 2 years ago, when he'd still answered every call on the first ring. Her hand moved instinctively to her swollen belly. 7 months pregnant, and she'd never felt more alone. The baby kicked hard against her ribs, as if sensing her distress. "I know, sweetheart," she whispered. "Mama's trying to reach Daddy. He's just busy. Busy." That word had become the anthem of their marriage over the past 8 months. Busy with meetings, busy with territory disputes, busy with everything except her. Elena had known what she was getting into when she married Marco Santoro. Everyone in Chicago knew the Santoro name, even if they pretended not to. His family controlled the South Side, ran half the construction contracts in the city, and had their hands in businesses that ranged from legitimate real estate to operations Elena had learned not to ask about. But Marco had promised her things would be different. He'd promised she'd never feel like second place to the empire his father had built. That promise felt like a lifetime ago. Her phone buzzed. For a moment, hope flared in her chest, but it was just her sister, Sophia. "Hey, how are you feeling?" Sophia's voice was warm with concern. Elena sank into one of the kitchen chairs, her free hand still pressed against her belly. "I've been better. The headaches are getting worse, and I've been seeing spots all morning." "Elena, that doesn't sound normal. Have you called Dr. Reeves?" "I tried. She's not in until this afternoon. I wanted to talk to Marco first, but he's not answering." There was a pause on the other end. Elena could practically hear her sister biting back the criticism of Marco that had become increasingly frequent over the past few months. "Where is he?" Sophia asked finally. "Some emergency meeting. There's always an emergency meeting these days." "Elena, those symptoms you're describing, the headaches, the dizziness, seeing spots, those could be signs of preeclampsia. You need to get checked out right away." Fear twisted in Elena's stomach. "I'm sure it's just stress. The baby's moving normally. Everything's probably fine." "Probably isn't good enough. Listen to me, go to the hospital. Now. I'll meet you there. Let me try Marco one more time. He should know what's happening. Elena." "One more time, Sophia. Please." After hanging up, Elena dialed Marco's number again. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then his voice, clipped and impatient. "Elena, I'm in the middle of something." Relief and frustration warred in her chest. "Marco, I need you to listen to me. Something's wrong. I've been having these headaches, and I'm seeing spots. And Sophia thinks, can this wait? I'm dealing with a situation with the Moretti family. They're trying to move in on our territory on Halsted Street. And if I don't handle this now, Marco, I think something might be wrong with the baby." She heard voices in the background. Someone calling his name urgently. Marco's voice turned even sharper. "Elena, I really can't do this right now. Call your doctor. That's what we pay her for. I'll be home later tonight, and we can talk then." "Marco, please. I'm scared." "Not now, Elena." The line went dead. Elena stared at the phone in her hand, those 2 words echoing in her mind. Not now. As if her fear, her health, their baby's well-being was just another interruption in his busy schedule. She felt something shift inside her, not the baby, but something deeper. The final thread of patience that had been fraying for months finally snapped. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Elena grabbed her purse and keys with shaking hands. She wasn't going to wait for Marco to decide she was worth his time. She wasn't going to sit in this empty penthouse hoping he'd remember he had a wife and a child on the way. She was going to the hospital, just like Sophia said. And when Marco finally decided to check his phone, when he finally decided his wife was more important than whatever territory dispute or business deal was consuming his attention, She'd tell him exactly what she thought of being second place in her own marriage. The elevator ride down from the penthouse felt longer than usual. Elena leaned against the mirrored wall, watching her reflection blur and sharpen as waves of dizziness came and went. She looked pale, she realized. When had she gotten so pale? Her phone buzzed. For a wild moment, she thought it might be Marco calling back, apologizing, saying he was on his way. But it was just Sophia. "I'm heading to Northwestern Memorial. Meet me there?" Elena texted back quickly. "On my way." The parking garage was dim and cool, a stark contrast to the bright penthouse. Elena's footsteps echoed off the concrete as she made her way to her car, a sleek black Mercedes that Marco had insisted on buying her. "Nothing but the best for my wife," he'd said. She wondered if he even remembered what car she drove anymore. As she reached for the door handle, another wave of dizziness hit, stronger this time. Elena grabbed the side mirror to steady herself, breathing slowly through her nose. The baby kicked frantically, as if protesting the surge of adrenaline flooding her system. "It's okay," she whispered. "We're going to get checked out. Everything's going to be okay." But as she slid behind the wheel and started the engine, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that nothing was okay, that everything was very, very wrong. Marco Santoro stood in the back office of Rossi's, a restaurant in Little Italy that served excellent osso buco to civilians and as a neutral meeting ground for Chicago's various family operations. His phone sat on the table in front of him, screen dark, while he tried to focus on what Vincent Moretti was saying. "Your father would have understood the importance of maintaining boundaries," Vincent was saying, his silver hair catching the light from the single overhead bulb. "The Halsted Street corridor has been neutral territory for 20 years. You moving your operations there breaks decades of agreement." Marco's jaw tightened. He was 32 years old, and he'd been running the Santoro family operations for 3 years since his father's heart attack had forced retirement. 3 years of every old guard captain questioning his decisions, comparing him to his father, treating him like a child playing dress up in his father's suit. "The agreement was made when my father and your father were running things," Marco said evenly. "Times change. The city's changing. We need to adapt or we'll lose ground to the Mexicans moving in from the west side." "So, you break treaty? You risk war?" Vincent's lieutenant, a thick-necked man named Carlo, spoke up. "You think you're ready for that, kid?" Marco's hands curled into fists beneath the table. Kid. He hated that word. Hated the dismissiveness, the implication that he hadn't earned his position. "I think," Marco said carefully, "that holding on to old agreements that no longer serve anyone's interests is how families end up extinct. My father's generation built an empire. My job is to make sure it survives into the next generation." His phone buzzed against the table. Elena's name lit up the screen. Marco glanced at it, then back at Vincent and Carlo. This meeting had taken weeks to arrange. If he walked away now, if he showed weakness by choosing his wife over business, every family in Chicago would see it as proof that he wasn't strong enough to lead. He let it go to voicemail. "You were saying?" Vincent prompted. The meeting dragged on for another hour. Negotiations, veiled threats, careful positioning. This was the game Marco had been born into, the world he'd been trained for since childhood. His father had always said that strength was everything in their world. Show weakness once, and rivals would tear you apart like wolves scenting blood. Marco's phone buzzed again. Elena. He felt a flash of irritation. She knew how important today was. They'd argued about it last night, her complaining that he was never home, him trying to explain that he was building security for their family, for their future child. "You need to get that?" Carlo asked with a smirk. "No," Marco said flatly. He declined the call and turned his phone face down on the table. "Let's talk numbers. You want us out of Halsted. Fine. What's it worth? To you?" Elena made it 3 blocks before the pain started. It began as a tightening across her abdomen, sharp enough to make her gasp. She pulled over on a side street, hands gripping the steering wheel as the contraction, because that's what it was, she realized with growing fear, slowly released. 7 months. It was too early. Way too early. She tried Marco again. Voicemail. Marco, her voice shook as she left the message. Something's really wrong. I'm having contractions, and I can't see right. And Marco, please. I need you. I'm scared. Please call me back. She hung up and immediately called Sophia. I'm 10 minutes from the hospital, her sister answered. Where are you? I pulled over. Sophia, I'm having contractions. It's too early, the baby isn't due for 2 more months. Okay, listen to me. Can you drive? Are you safe to drive? Another contraction hit, stealing her breath. Elena waited for it to pass before answering. I think so. They're not close together yet. Drive straight to Northwestern. Don't stop for anything. I'll meet you at the emergency entrance. Elena put the car back in drive with shaking hands. The streets of Chicago blurred around her as she navigated toward Northwestern Memorial. Red lights felt like torture. Every stop sign an eternity. Her phone rang. Elena's heart leaped, thinking it was finally Marco. But it was an unknown number. Hello, Mrs. Santoro? A man's voice, unfamiliar. Yes? This is Detective Chen with the Chicago Police Department. I need to speak with you about your husband. Elena's world tilted. What about him? Is he okay? Ma'am, I need you to come down to the station. There's been an incident involving your husband's business associates. I can't. I'm on my way to the hospital. This is urgent, Mrs. Santoro. We have questions about... Another contraction hit, harder this time. Elena gasped, nearly dropping the phone. Ma'am, are you all right? I'm in labor, she managed through gritted teeth. I'm going to the hospital right now. If you want to talk to me, you can find me at Northwestern Memorial. She hung up before the detective could respond. Nothing mattered right now except getting to the hospital, getting help for her baby. The emergency entrance of Northwestern Memorial appeared ahead. Elena pulled up to the curb, not caring that she was blocking traffic. Sophia was already there, rushing toward the car as Elena pushed open the driver's door. I've got you, Sophia said, helping Elena out of the car. I've got you. A wheelchair appeared, pushed by a nurse, who took one look at Elena's pale face and said, Obstetric emergency. Let's move. Everything became a blur of motion and sound. Fluorescent lights overhead, Sophia's hand gripping hers, voices calling out medical terms Elena couldn't process, the baby kicking frantically against her ribs, as if fighting to stay inside where it was safe. How far along are you? Someone asked. 28 weeks, Elena gasped. History of complications? No. Everything was normal until today. Blood pressure is 170 over 1 to 10. A nurse called out. Get Dr. Reeves down here now, someone else ordered. And prep the NICU. They wheeled her into a room, transferred her to a bed. Monitors appeared, straps around her belly to measure contractions. An IV needle slid into her arm. Dr. Reeves appeared, her kind face creased with concern. Elena, I need you to listen to me carefully. Your blood pressure is dangerously high, and you're showing signs of severe preeclampsia. Combined with the early labor, we need to monitor you very closely. The baby. Elena could barely get the words out. We're doing everything we can. But Elena, if your condition worsens, we may need to deliver early to save both of you. Sophia squeezed her hand. Have you reached Marco? Elena shook her head, tears streaming down her face. He won't answer. He said not now. What? I called him. I told him something was wrong. He said, not now, and hung up. Sophia's face hardened with fury, but before she could respond, another contraction hit. The monitors beeped frantically. Doctor. Reeves checked the readouts, and her expression grew more concerned. The baby's in distress, she said quietly to the nurses, but Elena heard it anyway. Heart rate is dropping. Get the OR ready. We might need to do an emergency C-section. Fear, unlike anything Elena had ever known, flooded through her. Please, she whispered. Please save my baby. We're going to do everything we can, Dr. Reeves promised. But Elena, I need to ask, is there someone we should call? Your husband? Elena closed her eyes, fresh tears sliding down her temples. He said not now. Marco's phone buzzed for the 7th time in 2 hours. He glanced at it while Vincent Moretti droned on about historical territory agreements. All missed calls from Elena. He felt a twinge of guilt. He'd been harsh with her earlier, but she had to understand this. Meeting determined whether they'd have peace or war with the Moretti family. Her doctor's appointment or whatever she was worried about could wait a few hours. His phone buzzed again. Not a call this time, but a text from an unknown number. Your wife is at Northwestern Memorial. Emergency obstetrics. You should get here. Dr. Reeves. Marco's blood turned to ice. He was on his feet before he'd consciously decided to move. We're done here. Vincent looked up in surprise. We haven't finished negotiating. I don't care. Marco grabbed his phone and jacket. My wife is in the hospital. We'll finish this later. Carlo sneered. See? Too soft. His father would never. Marco had the man by the throat and pressed against the wall in one fluid motion. My father, he said with deadly calm, would tell you that family comes first. Always. He released Carlo and was out the door before anyone could respond, his phone already dialing Elena's number as he ran toward his car. It went straight to voicemail. Marco's Maserati tore through Chicago streets like a black bullet, weaving between traffic with the kind of reckless speed that would have gotten anyone else arrested. But Marco wasn't thinking about traffic laws. He wasn't thinking about the meeting he'd just abandoned or the potential consequences of walking out on Vincent Moretti. All he could think about was Elena's voice on that last call. I think something might be wrong with the baby. And he'd said, not now. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. The 15-minute drive to Northwestern Memorial felt like an eternity. Every red light was torture. Every slow-moving car an obstacle he wanted to ram out of his way. He tried calling Elena again. No answer. He tried Sophia's number, which he'd saved months ago during a family dinner. It rang twice before she picked up. Where the hell have you been? Sophia's voice was sharp with fury. I'm 5 minutes out. What's happening? Is Elena okay? Is the baby? She's in emergency surgery. They had to do a C-section. Her blood pressure spiked to dangerous levels, and the baby was in distress. Marco's vision blurred. He blinked hard, forcing himself to focus on the road. Surgery? Sophia, what do you mean surgery? She was fine this morning. She wasn't fine, Marco. She called you hours ago telling you something was wrong. You said not now. The words hit him like physical blows. I didn't know it was serious. She didn't say. She said something was wrong with the baby. Sophia's voice rose. What part of that wasn't serious enough for you? Marco had no answer. He took a corner too fast, tires squealing. I'm almost there. Which floor? 5th floor, surgical wing. But Marco, Sophia's voice cracked. You need to prepare yourself. The baby's 10 weeks early. They don't know if. The line went dead as Marco pulled into the hospital parking garage. He abandoned his car in a no-parking zone and ran for the elevators. The 5th floor was a maze of sterile hallways and fluorescent lights. Marco followed the signs to the surgical wing, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Every second felt like drowning. He found Sophia in a waiting room, her eyes red from crying. She stood when she saw him, and for a moment Marco thought she might slap him. He almost wished she would. It would be easier than the look of disappointment and anger on her face. Where is she? Marco demanded. Still in surgery. It's been 40 minutes. 40 minutes? Marco ran his hands through his hair. What happened? Tell me everything. Sophia's jaw tightened. She had severe preeclampsia. Her blood pressure was through the roof, and she was having seizures by the time they got her into the OR. The baby's heart rate kept dropping, so they had to deliver immediately. Seizures? The word came out as barely a whisper. Yes, Marco. Seizures, which can cause brain damage, stroke, or death. They're fighting to stabilize her. Now, Marco sank into one of the waiting room chairs, his legs suddenly unable to hold him. This couldn't be happening. Not to Elena, not to their baby. The baby? He forced himself to ask. A girl. 2 pounds, 6 ounces. They took her straight to the NICU. She's on a ventilator. A girl. They were having a girl. Marco had imagined this moment 1,000 times, finding out the sex of their baby, celebrating, picking out names. He'd wanted to wait until the birth to find out. To have that surprise moment in the delivery room with Elena beside him. Not like this. Never like this. I want to see her. You can't yet. They're still working on stabilizing her breathing. Marco. Sophia's voice softened slightly. She's so tiny. She looks like a little bird. Before Marco could respond, a doctor in surgical scrubs emerged from the double doors. Dr. Reeves. He recognized from the few appointments he'd actually bothered to attend. Mr. Santoro. Her expression was carefully neutral. Your wife is out of surgery. We had to perform an emergency C-section due to severe preeclampsia and fetal distress. Is she? Marco couldn't finish the sentence. She's alive, but she's in critical condition. The seizures caused some complications. We have her sedated right now to prevent further seizures and to allow her body to recover from the trauma. The next 48 hours will be crucial. Marco felt like he'd been punched in the chest. Can I see her? Yes, but she won't be conscious. And Mr. Santoro, Dr. Reeves's eyes held a judgment he recognized. Your wife was trying to reach you for hours before this happened. If she'd gotten medical attention sooner, we might have been able to prevent the severity of her condition. The guilt that had been building in Marco's chest exploded into something darker, more consuming. I know, he said hoarsely. I know. Dr. Reeves led him through the surgical wing to a recovery room. Nothing could have prepared Marco for the sight of Elena hooked up to machines, tubes running from her arms, a ventilator helping her breathe. Her face was pale, peaceful in unconsciousness, but surrounded by monitors that beeped and flickered with readings Marco didn't understand. We're monitoring her closely, Doctor, Reeves explained. Her blood pressure is starting to come down, which is a good sign. But Mr. Santoro, you need to understand severe preeclampsia can cause lasting damage. Kidney failure, liver damage, stroke. We won't know the full extent until she wakes up. Marco approached the bed slowly, as if Elena might shatter if he moved too quickly. Her hand lay on top of the blanket, small and pale. He took it carefully, feeling how cold her fingers were. Elena, he whispered. I'm here. I'm so sorry. I'm here now. But she didn't respond. Couldn't respond. Dr. Reeves gave him a moment before speaking again. Your daughter is in the NICU on the 6th floor. Would you like to see her? Marco looked at Elena's unconscious form, torn between staying with his wife and meeting his daughter. Sophia appeared in the doorway, as if sensing his dilemma. I'll stay with her, Sophia said quietly. Go meet your daughter. Marco squeezed Elena's hand one more time before forcing himself to leave the room. Doctor, Reeves led him to the elevator, then to the neonatal intensive care unit, a place Marco had never imagined he'd need to know. The NICU was a world unto itself. Soft lighting, hushed voices, and row after row of tiny incubators containing babies so small they didn't look real. Dr. Chen, a neonatologist, met them at the entrance. Mr. Santoro, your daughter is in stable but critical condition. She's on a ventilator to help her breathe, and we have her under warming lights because babies this premature can't regulate their own body temperature yet. They approached one of the incubators, and Marco's breath caught in his throat. His daughter. She was impossibly tiny, her skin translucent and red, her eyes fused, shut. Tubes and wires covered her fragile body, IV lines, oxygen saturation monitors, feeding tubes. Her entire hand was smaller than Marco's thumb. Can I? His voice broke. Can I touch her? You can put your hand through the port here, doctor, Chen showed him. But very gently. Premature babies have very sensitive skin and nervous systems. Marco carefully slid his hand through the opening in the incubator. His daughter's entire body fit in his palm. He touched her with one finger, feeling the impossible softness of her skin, the rapid flutter of her heartbeat. She's a fighter. Doctor, Chen said. Her vitals are better than we expected for a baby born at 28 weeks. But Mr. Santoro, I need to be honest with you, the next few weeks are critical. Premature babies face a lot of challenges. Respiratory issues, infection risk, brain bleeds. We'll be monitoring her constantly. Marco couldn't take his eyes off his daughter. She was so small, so fragile, fighting for every breath, with the help of machines. And Elena didn't even know she existed yet. What do we do? Marco asked. What does she need? Right now? Time? Time to grow and strengthen. Time for her lungs to mature. We'll feed her through a tube until she's strong enough to eat on her own. The ventilator will help her breathe until her lungs are ready. How long? Weeks. At minimum. Possibly months. Every baby is different. Marco stood there for a long time, his hand resting gently on his daughter, watching her tiny chest rise and fall with mechanical precision. This was his child, his and Elena's, and he'd almost lost them both because he'd been too busy, too proud, too focused on proving himself to a room full of men who would forget him the moment he died. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out with his free hand, seeing multiple missed calls from Tony, his second in command. And a text. Moretti's are pissed you walked out. They're saying it's a sign of disrespect. We might have a problem. Marco stared at the message for a long moment. Then he typed back, I don't care. Handle it. I'm not leaving this hospital. He turned off his phone and slipped it back into his pocket. Does she have a name? Dr. Chen asked gently. Marco thought about all the names he and Elena had discussed. They'd had a list for a boy, a shorter list for a girl. But Elena had wanted to wait until she saw the baby to decide. We should meet her first, she'd said. See what name fits. Isabella, Marco said suddenly. It had been at the top of Elena's list. Isabella Marie Santoro. That's a beautiful name. Dr. Chen smiled. Isabella is lucky to have you here. But Marco didn't feel lucky. He felt like a failure. Like he'd let down the two most important people in his life when they'd needed him most. The next 3 days were the longest of Marco's life. He divided his time between Elena's room and Isabella's incubator, sleeping in uncomfortable hospital chairs when exhaustion forced him to rest. Tony brought him changes of clothes and food he barely touched. The Santoro family empire continued to function without him, which should have bothered Marco more than it did. All that mattered was the rhythm of monitors, the rise and fall of breathing machines, the gradual improvement in Isabella's vital signs. Elena remained unconscious, her body recovering from the trauma. The doctors assured Marco this was normal, that she needed rest, but every hour she didn't wake felt like an eternity. On the third day, Sophia found him asleep in the chair beside Elena's bed, his hand still holding his wife's. Marco. She shook his shoulder gently. Marco, wake up. He jerked awake, immediately looking at Elena's monitors, checking for any change. She's fine, Sophia said quickly. But there's someone here to see you. Marco rubbed his face. If it's anyone from the family, tell them I'm not available. It's not the family. It's Detective Chen, from the police. Marco's blood went cold. In all the chaos of the past few days, he'd forgotten about the detective who'd called Elena. What does he want? He says it's urgent. Something about Elena. Reluctantly, Marco followed Sophia to a small consultation room where a middle-aged man in a rumpled suit was waiting. Detective Chen stood when Marco entered, his expression serious. Mr. Santoro, I'm sorry to bother you during this difficult time, but I need to speak with you about your wife. What about her? Marco's voice was sharp with protective instinct. We've been investigating some unusual activity involving your business associates. During that investigation, your wife's name came up. Marco's hands curled into fists. Elena has nothing to do with my business. That's what we thought too. But Mr. Santoro, someone has been using your wife's identity, making calls, opening bank accounts, attending meetings with known criminal associates. We have surveillance footage, phone records, financial documents all, pointing to your wife being involved in organized crime activity. That's impossible. Elena doesn't know anything about my operations. I've kept her completely separate. Detective Chen pulled out a tablet and showed Marco a series of photos. A woman who looked remarkably like Elena, meeting with Vincent Moretti's associates. The same woman entering a warehouse Marco knew was used for money laundering. More photos of her in restaurants, parking garages, always with people connected to Chicago's underworld. This isn't Elena, Marco said immediately. Look at the bone structure, the way she holds herself. This is someone who looks like her, but it's not her. We're beginning to suspect the same thing. But Mr. Santoro, someone has gone to great lengths to make it appear that your wife is deeply involved in criminal activity. Someone with access to her personal information, her schedule, her appearance. Marco's mind raced. Why? What's the angle? That's what we're trying to figure out. But Mr. Santoro, your wife has been in the hospital for 3 days. In that time, she has been spotted at 2 different locations conducting business with your competitors. The implications hit Marco like a freight train. Someone was impersonating Elena. Someone had been doing it for months, maybe longer, building a false identity, creating a trail of evidence that could destroy her reputation and implicate her in crimes she knew nothing about. And if someone was willing to go to those lengths, it meant Elena was in danger. I need protection for my wife and daughter, Marco said immediately. 24-hour security. No one gets near them without my approval. Mr. Santoro, I can arrange for police protection. No. Marco's voice was flat. My people I trust. You focus on finding out who's doing this and why. Detective Chen studied him for a long moment. I could arrest you right now, you know. I have enough evidence to bring charges. But you won't. Because, you know, I'm not the real target here. Someone's playing a bigger game, and Elena's caught in the middle of it. Find out who, Detective Chen said. But Mr. Santoro, when we catch them, they're mine. No mafia justice, no street solutions. We do this by the book. Marco didn't answer. He wasn't making promises he might not keep. Back in Elena's room, Marco pulled out his phone and made a call he'd been avoiding. Tony, I need a full security detail at Northwestern Memorial. 2 guards on Elena's room, 2 on the NICU. No one gets access without my explicit approval. Boss, what's going on? Someone's been impersonating Elena. I need to find out who and why. Pull our surveillance from the past 6 months. Check every meeting, every location where this fake Elena has been spotted. Someone in our organization might have seen something. On it. Boss, Tony hesitated. The Moretti situation is escalating. Vincent's saying you disrespected him by walking out of the meeting. He's making moves on our territories. Let him, Marco said tiredly. Right now, I don't care about territories or respect or any of it. My wife and daughter are fighting for their lives. Everything else can wait. Understood. I'll handle the Moretti situation and get you that surveillance. Marco hung up and returned to Elena's bedside. Her color looked better today. Less gray. More like the warm olive skin he knew. But she still hadn't woken up. I'm sorry, he whispered, taking her hand. Elena, I'm so sorry. I should have answered your calls. I should have been there. But I'm here now, and I swear to you I'm going to find whoever did this, whoever put you in danger, and I'm going to make sure they never threaten our family again. The machines beeped their steady rhythm. Elena's chest rose and fell, and Marco sat vigil, waiting for his wife to wake up, preparing for a war he was only beginning to understand. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. On the 4th day, Elena's eyes finally opened. Marco had been dozing in the chair, his hand still holding hers, when he felt her fingers twitch. His eyes flew open to find Elena staring at him, confusion clouding her gaze. Marco? Her voice was barely a whisper, rough from the breathing tube they'd removed the day before. I'm here. He stood, leaning over her carefully. Elena, thank God. You're awake. She blinked slowly, trying to focus. What happened? Where? Her hand moved to her stomach, finding it flat beneath the hospital gown. Panic flooded her face. The baby! Marco, where's the baby? She's okay, Marco said quickly, squeezing her hand. She's in the NICU. She's tiny, but she's fighting. Elena, you had severe preeclampsia. They had to do an emergency C-section. Tears filled Elena's eyes. We have a daughter? Isabella. I named her Isabella, but we can change it if you want. I needed to call her something. Isabella, Elena repeated softly. Can I see her? Soon. You need to get stronger first. Elena. His voice broke. I'm so sorry. You called me, you told me something was wrong, and I said, not now. I chose a business meeting over you, and I almost lost you both because of it. Elena was quiet for a long moment, tears sliding down her temples. You said not now, she whispered. Those were the last words I heard before everything went black. The words hit Marco like bullets. Elena, please. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I failed you in the worst possible way. But please, give me a chance to make this right. How? Her voice was small, broken. How do you make this right, Marco? Our daughter was born 10 weeks early because you were too busy for a phone call. She's fighting for her life in an incubator because you couldn't spare 5 minutes to listen to your wife. I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for it. But Elena, there's more you need to know. Someone's been impersonating you, using your identity to meet with my business associates, to make it look like you're involved in criminal activity. Elena's eyes widened. What? That's impossible. I don't even know your business associates. I know. That's how I know it's not you. But someone who looks enough like you to fool surveillance cameras has been building a false trail for months. The police think you're a criminal, Elena. They have evidence, fake evidence that could destroy your reputation and put you in prison. Why would someone do that? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. And I'm going to protect you and Isabella until I do. Before Elena could respond, Dr. Reeves entered for her hourly check. Mrs. Santoro, you're awake. How are you feeling? Tired. Confused. I want to see my daughter. Dr. Reeves exchanged a look with Marco. Let me examine you. First, and if everything looks good, we can arrange for you to visit the NICU. But Mrs. Santoro, I need to warn you, Isabella is very small. She's on a lot of machines. It can be overwhelming for first-time parents. I don't care, Elena said firmly. She's my daughter. I need to see her. An hour later, after Dr. Reeves had cleared her for a wheelchair visit, Marco pushed Elena through the hospital corridors to the NICU. She was silent during the journey, her hands gripping the armrests of the wheelchair so tightly her knuckles were white. The NICU nurses smiled kindly as they approached Isabella's incubator. Your daughter has been waiting for you, Mrs. Santoro. Elena's breath caught when she saw Isabella for the first time. Oh, she whispered. Oh, Marco, she's so tiny. 2 pounds, 6 ounces, Marco said quietly. But she's gained 3 ounces since she was born. Can I? Elena reached toward the incubator. Can I touch her? The nurse showed her the hand ports, and Elena carefully slid her hand inside. Her finger touched Isabella's palm, and incredibly, impossibly, the baby's tiny fingers wrapped around it. Elena burst into tears. She knows you're her mama, the nurse said softly. Marco knelt beside the wheelchair, one hand on Elena's shoulder, the other reaching in to touch their daughter. For the first time in 4 days, his family was together. Broken, healing, but together. I'm so sorry, Elena whispered to Isabella. I'm sorry Mommy couldn't keep you safe. I'm sorry you had to be born so early. None of this is your fault, Marco said fiercely. Elena, you did everything right. You tried to get help. You tried to reach me. This is on me. They stayed there for over an hour, both parents with their hands on their tiny daughter, watching her breathe, watching her fight, falling in love with every tiny movement she made. When they finally returned to Elena's room, she was exhausted, but more present than she'd been since waking up. Marco, I want to know everything, she said as he helped her back into bed. About your business, about the person impersonating me, about what we're facing. No more secrets. No more protecting me by keeping me in the dark. Marco hesitated. His every instinct screamed to shield her, to keep her separate from the dangerous world he inhabited. But he'd seen where that instinct led. To missed phone calls and emergency C-sections and his wife nearly dying while he negotiated territory disputes. Okay, he said finally. No more secrets. He told her everything. About the Santoro family operations, the territories they controlled, the businesses legitimate and otherwise. About the Moretti family and their attempts to encroach on Santoro territory. About Vincent Moretti's belief that Marco was too young, too soft to lead. And about the surveillance photos of someone who looked like Elena, meeting with Marco's enemies, building a case that could destroy them both. Someone wants to take down the Santoro family, Marco concluded. And they're willing to use you to do it. But I don't know who or why. Elena was quiet for a long time, processing everything. The detective who called me, she said finally. Detective Chen. He wanted me to come to the station. He said there'd been an incident involving your business associates. He thinks you're a criminal mastermind, Marco said bitterly. He has evidence of you coordinating with rival families. Then we need to prove it's not me. We need to find whoever's doing this before they succeed in framing me. We. Yes, we. Elena's voice was stronger now, more determined. You said no more secrets, Marco. That means I'm part of this. Someone is using my face, my name, my identity to hurt our family. I'm not going to just sit in this hospital bed and let that happen. Marco looked at his wife pale, weak from surgery, but with fire in her eyes he recognized from when they'd first met. Elena had always been stronger than she looked. He'd made the mistake of confusing her gentleness for weakness, her trust for naivety. He wouldn't make that mistake again. Okay, he said. We do this together. But Elena, you need to recover first. You need to get strong enough to leave this hospital and take care of Isabella. How long will that take? Dr. Reeves says another few days if your blood pressure stays stable. But Elena, Isabella could be in the NICU for weeks or months. We need to be prepared for a long fight. Then we'd better figure out who's coming after us before they strike again. As if on cue, Marco's phone buzzed. A text from Tony. Found something on the surveillance. You need to see this. Coming to the hospital now. Marco showed Elena the message. My second in command. He's been reviewing our security footage, looking for clues about the fake Elena. Then let's see what he found. 20 minutes later, Tony appeared in Elena's hospital room, a laptop tucked under his arm. He stopped short when he saw Elena, awake, his expression shifting to relief. Mrs. Santoro, it's good to see you're recovering. Thank you, Tony. Marco says you found something? Tony glanced at Marco, who nodded. Show us everything. Tony set up the laptop on the rolling table, pulling up security footage from various locations. This is from 6 months ago, outside Rossi's restaurant, where we sometimes hold meetings. The video showed a woman who looked remarkably like Elena arriving in a black sedan, entering the restaurant, staying for an hour, then leaving. That's not me, Elena said immediately. I've never been to that restaurant. I know, Tony said, because this, he pulled up another video, is you at the same time, having lunch with your sister at that cafe on Michigan Avenue. The timestamp matched. While the fake Elena was meeting with criminals, the real Elena was having an innocent lunch with Sophia. Someone studied you, Marco said quietly. They learned your mannerisms, your style. They found someone who looked enough like you to pass for you on surveillance cameras. But why? Elena asked. What's the endgame? Tony pulled up more footage. That's what I wanted to show you. This is from 2 weeks ago. The video showed the fake Elena meeting with a man Marco recognized immediately. Vincent Moretti. They're working together. Marco breathed. Vincent is behind this. It gets worse, Tony said grimly. He pulled up another video, this one from a week ago. The fake Elena was handing Vincent a folder. We managed to enhance the audio. Listen. Vincent's voice came through tinny but clear. Are you sure Santoro doesn't suspect? The fake Elena's voice was eerily similar to the real one. He keeps me completely in the dark. He has no idea I know anything about his operations. Good. When the time comes, the police will find evidence that you've been feeding information to rival families for months. Santoro will be disgraced, his family will fracture, and will be in position to take over. And my payment? 5 million, as agreed, plus protection once Santoro is in prison. The video ended. Elena's face had gone pale. Vincent Moretti is trying to frame me, she whispered. He found someone who looks like me, and he's using her to destroy Marco's reputation and implicate me in crimes I didn't commit. And if the plan had worked, Marco said darkly, I'd be in prison, you'd be in prison, and the Moretti family would take over everything my father built. But it didn't work, Tony said, because Elena ended up in the hospital before they could complete their plan. And now we know what they're doing. Marco's phone rang. Detective Chen. Mr. Santoro, we need to talk. I have new information about your wife's case. I have new information too, Marco said. You've been played, detective. The woman in your surveillance footage isn't my wife. There was a pause. I'm listening. Come to Northwestern Memorial. Room 547. And Detective bring everything you have, because we're about to give you the real criminals. Detective Chen arrived at the hospital within 30 minutes, accompanied by a younger detective Marco didn't recognize. They crowded into Elena's hospital room, and Tony set up his laptop again, ready to present the evidence. Before we begin, Detective Chen said, looking at Elena with something that might have been an apology. Mrs. Santoro, I owe you an explanation. We've been investigating your husband's organization for over a year. When evidence surfaced suggesting you were involved, you assumed I was a criminal. Elena finished quietly. I understand. But detective, I've never been involved in my husband's business. I didn't even know the full extent of what he did until 3 days ago. Detective Chen pulled out his tablet, showing them the same surveillance photos Marco had seen days earlier. This woman has been meeting with known associates of various crime families across Chicago. She's been photographed at locations connected to money laundering, racketeering, and organized crime. She uses your name, Mrs. Santoro. She has identification with your information. Show him the footage, Marco said to Tony. For the next 20 minutes, Tony walked the detectives through the evidence he'd compiled. Side-by-side footage showing Elena in 2 places at once. Audio recordings of the imposter discussing criminal activities. And most damning of all, the conversation between the fake Elena and Vincent Moretti. Vincent Moretti orchestrated this entire thing, Marco explained. He found someone who looks like my wife, trained her to impersonate Elena, and used her to build a false case that would destroy both of us. With me in prison and Elena discredited, the Moretti family could take over Santoro operations without a war. Detective Chen watched the footage twice, his expression growing darker. This is extremely sophisticated. The level of planning, the attention to detail someone invested significant time and resources into this operation. Vincent's been trying to undermine me since I took over from my father, Marco said. He thinks I'm too young, too weak to lead. This was his way of proving it. Do you know who the imposter is? The younger detective asked. No, Tony admitted, but we're working on it. We have facial recognition software running through every database we can access. Let us handle that, Detective Chen said. If this woman has a criminal record, we'll find her. And Mr. Santoro, he looked at Marco seriously, I'm going to need everything you have. All the surveillance, all the evidence. Because if we're going to take down Vincent Moretti, we need to do this right. Marco hesitated. His instincts screamed not to trust the police, not to hand over evidence that could potentially be used against him. But Elena's hand found his, squeezing gently. We do this the right way, she said softly. No more secrets, remember? Marco looked at his wife, then at their daughter's incubator visible through the NICU window down the hall, then back at Detective Chen. "Tony, give them everything," he said finally. The investigation moved quickly once the police were involved. Within 48 hours, they had identified the imposter, a woman named Claudia Vega, Vincent Moretti's niece, who bore a striking resemblance to Elena. She'd undergone minor cosmetic procedures to enhance the similarity and had been studying Elena's mannerisms for months. "She's been arrested," Detective Chen informed them during his third visit to the hospital. "And she's talking, giving us details about Vincent's entire operation in exchange for a reduced sentence." "What about Vincent?" Marco asked. "Arrested this morning, along with 6 of his top lieutenants. The evidence is overwhelming. Phone records, financial transactions, Claudia's testimony. The Moretti family is finished. Elena, who was finally out of bed and able to walk short distances, stood by the NICU window watching Isabella. Is it really over?" "The immediate threat is over," Detective Chen said carefully. "But Mrs. Santoro, Mr. Santoro, you both need to understand that this investigation isn't finished. We still have questions about your husband's business operations." "I know," Marco said, "and I'm prepared to answer them. But Detective, I'm also prepared to walk away from all of it." Elena turned from the window, surprise evident on her face. "Marco, I mean it," he said, looking at her. "I've spent the past week watching our daughter fight for every breath. I've sat by your bed terrified that I'd lost you forever. And I realized none of the rest of it matters. The empire, the respect, the power. What good is any of it if I'm not there for the people I love?" "Mr. Santoro," Detective Chen said slowly, "are you saying you're willing to cooperate with our investigation?" "I'm saying I'm done. My father built the Santoro operations, and he can have them back. I'm out." "Marco, you can't just walk away," Tony protested from his position by the door. "The family needs you. Your father is too old to run things." "Then find someone else," Marco said flatly. "Or go legitimate. I don't care anymore, Tony. My wife almost died. My daughter was born 10 weeks early. I said not now when Elena needed me most, and I'm never making that mistake again." Elena crossed the room and took Marco's hand. "Are you sure about this?" "I've never been more sure of anything. Elena, you were right to be angry. You were right to feel like I'd chosen business over you. Because I did. Every single day, I chose meetings and territories and respect over the woman I married and the family we were building. I can't change the past, but I can change the future." Detective Chen closed his laptop. "I'll need detailed testimony about your operations. Names, locations, financial records. In exchange, we can discuss immunity." "Whatever you need," Marco said. "Just let me do one thing first." 2 weeks later, Elena was finally discharged from the hospital. Isabella was still in the NICU, but she was breathing on her own now, no longer needing the ventilator. She'd gained weight almost 4 pounds, and the doctors were cautiously optimistic about her progress. Marco had spent those 2 weeks methodically dismantling his criminal empire. He'd met with federal prosecutors, provided testimony against dozens of criminal associates, and transferred control of all legitimate Santoro businesses to a trust managed by people with no connection to organized crime. His father had been furious. The old guard had called him a traitor, but Marco didn't care. He'd made his choice. Elena stood in Isabella's NICU room, her hand resting gently on their daughter through the incubator ports. "The doctor says maybe 2 more weeks, and we can bring her home." Marco wrapped his arm around Elena's waist. "I talked to a real estate agent. There's a house in Evanston, near the lake. 3 bedrooms, big backyard, far enough from the city to feel safe, close enough to good hospitals." "You hate the suburbs," Elena said, smiling slightly. "I hate being away from you more." Marco turned her gently to face him. "Elena, I know I can't undo the past. I can't take back saying not now when you needed me. I can't give you back the pregnancy you should have had, or the birth you deserved. But I can promise you that from now on, you and Isabella come first. Always." Elena looked up at him, tears glistening in her eyes. "I'm still angry with you, you know. Some days I look at Isabella hooked up to all these machines, and I think about how different things could have been if you just answered your phone. I know, and you have every right to be angry. You have every right to leave me, to take Isabella and never look back. But I'm not going to, Elena said softly. Because as angry as I am, I also see you, Marco. Really see you, the man who's been sleeping in hospital chairs for 2 weeks. The man who gave up everything he was raised to value because his family mattered more. The man who sits here for hours every day talking to our daughter, telling her about the life we're going to build together. I love you, Marco said hoarsely. I loved you when I married you, but I didn't know how to show it. I thought providing for you meant building an empire. I thought protecting you meant keeping you separate from my world. I was wrong about all of it. You were wrong, Elena agreed. But Marco, I wasn't entirely right either. I let you keep me in the dark. I didn't push back when you built walls around me. I was so afraid of your world that I never asked the hard questions. We both have things we need to work on. So, we work on them. Together. Together, Elena echoed. Isabella made a small sound, her tiny hand grasping at the air. Both parents immediately focused on her, watching as she settled back into sleep. She's going to be okay, Marco said, though it sounded like he was trying to convince himself as much as Elena. She's a fighter, Elena said, just like her mother. 3 months later, Marco stood in the nursery of their new house in Evanston, watching Elena rock Isabella in the chair by the window. Their daughter had finally come home from the hospital 2 weeks ago, 5 pounds and healthy enough to thrive outside the NICU. The room was painted a soft yellow, with white furniture and curtains that filtered the afternoon sunlight, so different from the sleek, modern penthouse they'd left behind in the city. She's asleep, Elena whispered, standing carefully and placing Isabella in her crib. Marco wrapped his arms around Elena from behind, both of them watching their daughter sleep. I never get tired of seeing her breathe on her own. Me neither. They stood there in comfortable silence until Marco's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, and Elena tensed, slightly old habits dying hard. But Marco just glanced at it and put it back in his pocket. Just Tony. He can wait. What did he want? Probably to tell me about some business opportunity. He keeps trying to get me involved in the legitimate companies. Marco shrugged. I told him I'm consulting now. Security systems for small businesses. I can work from home, make my own hours, be there when you and Isabella need me. Elena turned in his arms, looking up at him. Are you happy? Really happy? You gave up so much. I gave up nothing that mattered, Marco said firmly. Elena, I spent 32 years thinking power and respect were what made a man successful. It took almost losing you to realize that success is standing in a nursery with my wife and daughter, knowing they're safe and healthy, and that I'll be here for every moment that matters. Even the 3 a.m. feedings? Elena teased. Especially the 3 a.m. feedings. Though I still think Isabella has a conspiracy to only have blowouts when I'm changing. Elena laughed, the sound filling the nursery with warmth. That's because she's already a daddy's girl. They moved to the living room, leaving Isabella's door open so they could hear if she woke. Elena curled up on the couch while Marco made them both tea, a domestic routine they'd developed over the past months. Sophia called, Elena said. She wants to come visit next weekend. Good. I like your sister. Even though she still looks at me like she's deciding whether to forgive me or stab me, she'll come around. She sees how much you've changed. Elena accepted the tea he handed her. Detective Chen called too. The trial for Vincent Moretti starts next month. They might need us to testify. Marco sat beside her, his arm automatically going around her shoulders. How do you feel about that? Nervous, but ready. He tried to destroy our lives, Marco. He hired someone to impersonate me, to frame us both. He deserves to face justice. He does. Marco was quiet for a moment. I ran into one of my father's old associates at the grocery store yesterday. He called me a traitor to the family legacy. I'm sorry. Don't be. Because you know what I realized? I am a traitor to that legacy. I'm betraying everything my father taught me about power and control and putting business first. and I've never been prouder of anything in my life." Elena set down her tea and turned to face him fully. "Marco Santoro, do you know what today is?" He thought for a moment, then his eyes widened. "Our anniversary. 3 years. 3 years since you promised to love and cherish me. It took us a while to figure out what that really meant. We almost didn't make it," Marco said quietly. "But we did, and we're stronger for it." Elena took his hand, placing it over her heart. "I forgive you, Marco. For the missed calls, for saying not now, for all of it. I forgive you because you've shown me every single day since that you've changed. That we've changed." Marco felt tears sting his. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not," Elena agreed with a small smile. "But you're stuck with me anyway." From the nursery, Isabella started to cry. A healthy, strong sound that never failed to fill Marco with gratitude. They both stood, but Marco got there first, lifting his daughter gently into his arms. "Hey, little one," he murmured. "What's wrong? Hungry? Lonely?" Isabella's cries softened at the sound of his voice. Elena appeared beside him, and together they settled into the rocking chair, Isabella cradled between them. "This is what matters," Marco said softly, looking at his wife and daughter. "This right here. Not territories or respect or proving myself to anyone. Just this." "Just this," Elena echoed, leaning her head on his shoulder. And as they sat together in the quiet nursery, rocking their daughter while the afternoon sun painted golden patterns on the walls, Marco finally understood what it meant to have everything that mattered. He'd almost lost it all, because of 2 words. Not now. But he'd been given a second chance, and he would spend the rest of his life making sure his family never had to beg for his attention again. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.